Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I'm your host, and I'll be stepping in as your expert study buddy today. Our mission is pretty simple. We're going to completely demystify C++ polymorphism so you can absolutely crush your upcoming CS217 exams. We're going to break down the concepts, look at some code, and map out the exact rules you need to know to master this core piece of object-oriented programming. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the intro to polymorphism, overriding and early binding, the virtual keyword, some tricky dynamic binding edge cases, virtual destructors, and finally a quick recap and your practice exercises. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Intro to polymorphism, defining the core concept. So what does this massive objective-sounding word actually mean? Well, if we break it down into its Greek roots, poly means many, and morphos means forms, literally many forms. In C++, it's the ability of a method to take on different forms at different times. Basically, we're redefining a superclass's behavior without ever actually touching its original underlying code. As your professor's notes highlight, this is absolutely crucial because it lets us program in the general rather than programming in the specific. Instead of writing totally custom code for every single object in our system, we write flexible code that just naturally adapts to whatever it's working with. Section 2. Overriding and early binding. Hiding previous meanings. Now, to actually pull off this many forms concept, we rely on a mechanism called function overriding. This is how subclasses essentially hide the older, previous meanings of a function. But you can't just do this however you want. There are really strict exam-relevant requirements here. First, you have to have inheritance, a clear base and derived class relationship. Second, the new function has to have exactly the same declaration name. Third, exactly the same return type. And fourth, exactly the same parameter list. If you tweak the return type or change a parameter, you're not overriding anymore, you're overloading, which is a totally different thing. So keep those 4 rules locked in. So why do we even do this? Your lecture slides hit the nail on the head. Overriding is needed when a derived class function has to do some added or different job than the base class function. It lets a specialized class behave exactly how it uniquely needs to, while still technically belonging to a broader parent category. But when we actually try this in code, we hit a pretty massive snag. Imagine you have a class A and a derived class B, and both have a basic print method. In your main function, you've got a print all method that expects a reference to class A. So you pass a class B object into it. Logically, you'd think class B's specific print method would run, right? No way. It just spits out class A's variables instead. This happens because of a little thing called early binding. Before the program even runs, the compiler statically links the function call to the pointer's declared type, which in this case is class A. Let's look at this through a mini narrative to really see how problematic this is. We've got a pet hierarchy. The base pet class has a make sound method that just prints shh, shh. We also have a cat class and a dog class that override this to say meow and woof. Down in our main function, we create a new cat named Kitty, but we store her using a generic pet pointer. Because of that static early binding we just talked about, when we tell Kitty to make a sound, the compiler only sees the pet pointer. The result, our cat Kitty says shh, shh instead of meowing. I mean, that is a huge logical error. This dichotomy between binding types is something you absolutely need to understand for your exams. Compile time binding, also called early or static binding, hooks up the function call to the function body before the program even runs. It strictly blindly looks at the variable's declared type. That's what caused our whole Kitty situation. The fix for this is runtime binding, also known as late or dynamic binding. This is where the decision of which function to run happens on the fly, during execution, based on the actual object sitting in memory. Section 3. The virtual keyword, fixing dynamic decisions. Okay, so we need a way to force the program to wait until runtime to make this decision. Think about it for a second. If you were looking at your C++ code, how do you actually tell the compiler to use dynamic binding? There is one specific magic keyword you need to add to your toolkit. The difference is subtle but incredibly powerful. If we compare the broken code with the fixed code, all we've done in the base pet class is add the word virtual right in front of the void make sound declaration. That one little keyword changes the whole shebang. It essentially taps the compiler on the shoulder and says, hey, don't statically bind this right now. Wait until the program runs and dynamically replace this method if a subclass happens to have overridden it. And boom, here's the result. By just adding virtual, late binding kicks in and correctly identifies the actual object at runtime. Even though we're still using a general pet pointer, the program now realizes, oh, there's a cat sitting in that specific memory space. So Kitty finally says meow meow and Doggy says woof woof. The subclass successfully hides the base class implementation. Section 4, Dynamic Binding Edge Cases. Object Creation Traps. Now, you've got to watch out for edge cases, especially when it comes to object creation. This is a classic exam trap. Let's methodically step through exactly what happens chronologically when a subclass object is created. Step 1, the subclass object gets instantiated in memory. Step 2, its constructor immediately calls the base class constructor first. Step 3, the dynamic polymorphic binding is established. But, and this is the crucial part, it only happens after that base construction part is underway. So why does that timing matter? Well, look at this code snippet. We're calling the virtual makeSound method directly inside the base pet constructor. When we create a cat object, that pet constructor runs first. At that exact millisecond, the dynamic binding to the cat class doesn't exist yet. So it prints, Kitty the pet says, shh, shh, shh. The program doesn't know it's a cat yet. Do not let this trick you on a test. On the flip side, once the object is completely built, internal calls work perfectly. If we add a wake-up method to the base pet class that internally calls makeSound, it works great. When we call wakeup from our main function, the object is already fully instantiated. Dynamic binding is fully active, so it correctly routes right to the cat's overridden makeSound method and meows. You can totally invoke virtual methods from within the class itself, just not during that initial construction phase. Section 5, Virtual Destructors, Memory Management Rules. We have to quickly touch on a hard and fast rule for memory management. If a derived class object is being held by a base class pointer and you delete it, only the base class destructor will run. If your derived class allocated memory for any dynamic objects, that memory is now completely leaked. It's gone. The fix is absolute. You must always use a virtual destructor in your base class. This guarantees that the derived class destructor fires first, safely cleaning up all that memory. Section 6, Recap and Practice Exercises. Reviewing key takeaways. Okay, let's wrap this up. Function overriding requires the exact same name, exact same return type, and exact same parameters. The virtual keyword is your best friend. It enables late dynamic binding at runtime so you can program in the general. Now for your practice exercises. Exercise 1 has you creating a message class to practice overloading a print method. Exercise 2 gets into multiple inheritance with mammals, marine animals, and a blue whale class. And exercise 3 is all about overriding a display function across a person, employee, and manager hierarchy. Before you go fire up your IDE and start typing away, I want to leave you with something to chew on for exercise 2. If a blue whale inherits from both mammals and marine animals, it essentially has two totally distinct base classes. How are you going to ensure the exact right function is called when you're using different parent pointers? Really think about how dynamic binding is going to handle multiple paths of inheritance there. Good luck with your exercises. You're going to do great on this exam, and happy coding!